Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 920 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's best of is episode 662, Control IQ Ninja. This episode is with Jeremy. He's the father of a child with type 1 diabetes, and he possesses an amazing understanding of Control IQ from Tandem. From April 12th, 2022, this is Control IQ Ninja. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Juicebox Podcast listeners, use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com to save 35% off your entire order of clothing, bedding, towels, whatever you can find at CozyEarth.com. You'll save 35% with Juicebox at checkout. If you're looking for community around type 1, you want to talk about Tandem Control IQ or anything else, find my private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. 40,000 members, Type 1, Type 2, parents, adults, beautiful mix, don't care what you eat, don't care how you live, you're welcome there. The podcast is sponsored today by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service and is 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. BetterHelp.com/Juicebox. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. And when you use my link, you'll save 10% on your first month of therapy. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. Talk to them however you feel comfortable. Text, chat, phone, or video call. If your therapist isn't the right fit, for any reason at all, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. And the best part for me is that with BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom picked for you. And you're going to get more scheduling flexibility and a more affordable price. BetterHelp.com/Juicebox. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Juicebox. Save 10% on your first month of therapy. The podcast is also sponsored by Touched by Type 1. Touched by Type 1 is a beautiful organization helping people with type 1 diabetes, and they just want you to check them out. touchedbytype1.org on Facebook and Instagram. And they have a big event coming up in a couple of months that I'm going to be speaking at. touchedbytype1.org. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 662 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today we're going to speak with Jeremy, who is a past guest on the show. Today's topic is much different than his first topic. We'll cover that later in the podcast. But today, Jeremy's going to tell you about how he manages his son's type 1 diabetes with Tandem's Control IQ. And let me tell you something. Jeremy's a next level guy. He's a bit of a ninja. He took what he learned on this podcast and just kept learning about Control IQ. And today he's going to tell you all about how he does it. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. After the show today, if you'd head over to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and fill out the survey, I would appreciate it. You need to be a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes or is the caregiver of someone with type 1. It only takes a few minutes. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. What episode were you on the first time?
It was the After Dark divorce episode.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about Okay, so go ahead and reintroduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Jeremy Rolfsmeyer. I'm a single dad of a type 1 diabetic named Thaman. He's 13 years old, and we have been diagnosed for 4 years, and our A1C has been between 5.3 and 5.8 for over 3.5 years.
Wow. And in these 3.5 years, have you always been using Control IQ, or has it been different management?
No, we've done all three. We've done straight pumping with Tandem. We've done basal IQ pumping and Control IQ pumping, all maintaining that same A1C spread.
Very nice. Okay.
I mean, sometimes I feel like I was blessed to be able to straight pump because you really, really understand what adjustments do to blood sugar. Mm-hmm. But you can start anywhere, really.
Yeah. Yeah. You could figure it out with needles. You could figure it out with pens. You can figure it out with a pump. Like, it's all just watching the insulin go in and seeing what it does. It's great, obviously, to be able to adjust your basal on the fly and not have to wait 24 hours to inject again. Sure. To try to make an improvement or a change. Just real quick for people, that episode that Jeremy was on before, 508 After Dark, Adult Child of Divorce. You actually came on that one because you started out, let me see if I can remember this, Jeremy. Well, this will be interesting. You were...
I don't know if it is that one because you said adult child.
I said the wrong one. Excuse me. Oh, geez. 372 After Dark, Divorce and Co-Parenting.
There you go. Sorry. That one.
I'm starting to pop. Actually, there's a lot of them here. I have 1, 2. I searched divorce in my episodes and came back with 4. Oh, no kidding. All right. Yours is 372 about co-parenting because if I'm remembering correctly, you're divorced as your child is diagnosed. And
we all get along.
Right. And you guys actually get along. Right. And that's what you were talking about. Right. I did get a lot of impactful letters back from people where they're like, can you just interview somebody who's not getting along and how they're doing it?
Yeah.
And I said, good luck getting somebody who's not getting along with their ex to come on a podcast and talk about it. I was like, people are not generally excited to divulge that kind of stuff. But I have gotten a little closer in a recent episode. 625 was about divorce and disagreement, and that person
and it was an excellent representation of the other side.
Yeah So I finally got there. It's not, I'm just saying, not easy to get somebody to come on and talk about their spouse or their ex-spouse, especially if they're not getting along very well. All right, so Jeremy, you are back today because, well, I know you, and I know you especially through the Facebook page, but through our previous conversations, and we text sometimes, and you are very good at using Control IQ. And I've had somebody on recently to talk about it, and I thought had a pretty surface conversation about it, and I didn't know enough about Control IQ to push back in certain places. So you're sort of on here to help me dig deeper.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of take it away. Tell me what you would tell somebody else if I said, hey, should I try Control IQ? What would you say?
So just to kind of give you an idea here, I also, and this is not an invitation to contact me and ask, I also can follow 3 other children up here in Montana that are on Control IQ. Mm-hmm. I also control their pumps. Their A1Cs are all below 7 as well. So I've kind of done this long enough with enough samples to understand what needs to be done with Control IQ to get it to work, not just on my child, but on different age children, on male, females, in puberty, out of puberty. But what it really comes down to is that before we even get into Control IQ, there's a few things that, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what pump you're on, that needs to be better understood or mentioned before we get into Control IQ. Stuff like consistency, how you treat lows, what you treat lows with, using protein at night, and just allowing basal to do its job. Mm-hmm. The way that we treat, like between my son and I, is we either use Mott's apple juice, that's the all natural stuff,
Mm-hmm.
or we use gummies. We know how much apple juice to drink to get to 3 carbs. We know how much to drink to 8 carbs, and it's consistent and it works the same way every single time. And you're going to hear the consistency through the Control IQ point of view as well. We know that what a gummy will do to his blood sugar. We know that when he's dropping this hard, he needs this many gummies. The longer that you stick with the same sort of thing, the better results you're going to have, instead of just throwing Oreos at your child. So
let me make sure, because I know what you're saying, but I want to make sure we're all clear.
Sure.
There are impacts, variables all over diabetes,
yes,
including the things you don't think of as being impactful. And the idea of you're getting low, what do I do? Doing something consistent breeds a consistent response. And more importantly, allows you to move forward without crazy highs or crazy lows or things that you don't expect to happen. So if you're consistent with how you bump your low blood sugars, then you'll be consistent with what happens afterwards. Not just like, hey, this time eat an Oreo, next time have a piece of chocolate cake, this time drink a soda, like that kind of thing.
Yes, and there's always times to eat the whole fridge.
Yeah, right.
There's always those extremely high delta where they're about to pass out and you just grab anything and everything and throw it down their throat. It doesn't happen often. If it is happening often, there's something wrong.
Right.
But moving on from that, we have to kind of talk about what I call garbage in, garbage out,
mm-hmm.
which means that, you need to be checking your Dexcom ratings, not just doing nothing about them. That starts with a good glucometer. And this is not an ad for
you want me to do the ad, Jeremy? The Contour Next
please.
One blood glucose meter. Are you about to say that?
Yes.
It's a great meter?
I just couldn't remember what the hell it was called.
But you
that
use
one
it.
thing. But anyways, and the thing is, we've tried different ones. There are tons of third-party studies out there that shows that Contour Next One is the most accurate meter on the market, period.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand there are some people that, can't afford, something like that because the strips are fairly expensive. But there's so many times that meter will exactly match Dexcom. It's not even funny.
Yeah, I agree.
Then there's certain things about Dexcom, like I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, we never calibrate. We're a family that calibrates. With my son, if you do not calibrate, the second it comes on, it will dump low to low and it will die. You have to calibrate my son immediately when it comes on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're good for the first 2 days. You have to calibrate on the 3rd. Then we have to calibrate on the 8th. Every other finger stick that we do every single morning, this is consistency, and every single night before he goes to bed is normally within 5 points.
Yeah. But you still do it. You still do it every time.
You still do it every single time.
Yeah.
You have to. The sensor will die. We've heard, Kevin Sayer come on and say that it doesn't work the same way for everybody. We just figured out what works for us.
Mm-hmm.
And with a very accurate Dexcom reading from a very, accurate glucometer, you can stop the garbage in, garbage out. And what I mean by that is only testing the blood sugar and checking Dexcom whenever the side arrow is sideways, and making sure you understand how the Dexcom works.
So that the numbers you're working with are good,
are accurate.
Yeah, so that you end up making good decisions. Arden's interesting. Arden's Dexcom either works, boom, or it needs to be calibrated on the first day.
Yes,
one or the other. I haven't seen a rhyme or reason to it. I would tell you the last 6 of them we've put on, I haven't had to do that, and then before that, a couple of them needed it. People's body chemistry is different. There's all kinds of different things going on. But your specific point is so incredibly important and valid, which is you are making decisions, measuring a medication based on a number. And you might be getting that number with a meter that's not accurate or a CGM that's not accurate. And then you're making decisions and running forward. I love that you test twice a day.
But here's the bigger picture, Scott.
Yeah.
You keep saying that I'm making decisions. Now put an algorithm in control.
Right.
You have bad Dexcom readings. It's 100 points higher. And it's dumping more insulin than it should. Garbage in, garbage out. You have garbage information going into the algorithm. You're going to get garbage out. Mm-hmm. So it is very vitally important to make sure that you have a Dexcom reading that is reliable.
Yeah.
This is all algorithms. This is Omnipod 5. This is Control IQ. This is going to be Control IQ 2.0. Whatever else comes out from Medtronic. Everything is based off of that blood sugar reading. And if it's not accurate, how can you expect your results to be accurate? Mm-hmm. They can't.
And you have to take some responsibility for that yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
There's, can I take a tiny, brief little sidebar here on this?
Sure.
I'm forever interested when longtime type 1s come on and they'll say things like, I didn't want to get a CGM until there was no calibration needed, because it's always, the inference is always that it's such an inconvenience. Like, why would I take on this new thing if it still needed my effort? And I think that's an old timey way of thinking about it.
Yes.
I think that, a CGM for my daughter is first. Like seriously, if the house was burning down and I could grab a pump or a CGM on the way out the door,
it would be the CGM.
I'd have to take the CGM, right? Not to say that it's a one or the other decision. I'm also, of course, a huge fan of the pump, but my point is that the idea that if it's not completely nothing I have to touch ever or nothing I have to think about, then I don't want to do it. I don't understand. This is where we're at with this technology, and using Dexcom G6 as an example. They tell you don't need to calibrate. That means they got it through the FDA, and you're going to be okay if you don't calibrate. But that might be that one day the thing thinks you're 130 and you're, I don't know, 150, or you're
exactly.
or you're 80 and it says you're one. I don't know. It might not.
But
be.
Here's the thing, though, Scott, is that if you want better than average control,
right,
you need to have better than average information going in.
Effort too.
And in order to get that better than average information going in, you have to calibrate. You hear people all the time saying, oh, Dexcom's 15 minutes behind. Not if your line is straight. Not it that's only whenever it's falling or rising. If you're primarily straight, and I know, and I will get into this later, that I'm not saying my son is straight all day long. Right. He is not. He is just like Arden. He has trips to 180, maybe once a day, and he comes back down. I'm not one of those people that craves a absolutely straight line. Mm-hmm. I do not go nuts. I just don't allow it to get nutty in the long run.
Yeah. But your point is that when you're in the middle of stability and the blood sugar is 96 and it's been 96 for the better part of 3 hours, there's a way to be certain that that's true. And by checking with a finger stick and then telling,
yes,
and then calibrating sometimes.
And that's first thing in the morning when they first wake up.
Okay. That's how it's working.
Glass of water, check your blood. He knows every morning, glass of water, check your blood. Water gets blood moving and he doesn't have anything impacting his blood sugar. Dexcom should be pretty straight on.
Yeah. And it is normally?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like within 5 points. If it's within 5, we don't touch it. If it's within 10, like if it's 10 or more, we're calibrating. And that's bullshit. That's sorry for the swearing.
No, that's fine.
That's just, it's not acceptable. And I know that may sound extreme, but it's not. It really isn't.
And from your experience, what's my question here? This is just proving out to you over and over again.
Yes.
But it is not what Dexcom would tell you to do. Is that correct?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Just like, dumping more insulin on your kid 30 minutes after he just ate is not what an endo would tell you to do.
Yeah.
So I guess moving on more to like the pump, the next thing that you kind of have to remember is that you have to understand the pump that you're on. Doesn't matter which pump it is. You have to understand how it works, especially if there's an algorithm involved. Control IQ is not a miracle machine like a lot of people think. Adjustments still have to be close and made, and sometimes made often. But you start looking at the Tandem, and I don't want to start sounding like a Tandem shill, but I am. The big things with Tandem is that you can adjust basal in 0.001 increments after 0.1. Like Omnipod or Medtronic can do 0.05. That's a 50 times increase in adjustability. And we all know how much basal is, how important basal is. Something that a lot of people don't know is that on a Tandem, the carb ratio, if it's under 10, you can adjust it by 0.1 instead of 1. If 8 isn't working and 9's too strong, you can do 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5. You can do by 0.1 to dial in that carb ratio.
Okay.
Once again, this comes back to consistency.
Yeah.
You can't just flop on either or. If 9's too strong, you can't say, oh, well, I'll just, turn their basal down for a half an hour. No, get it right. I mean, let's be honest. Our kids normally eat the same thing every morning at breakfast. I try to offer them a million different things, but it's always pancakes with chocolate chips, strawberries, and milk.
Wow.
Every single morning.
That's a lot of cooking.
Well, we always get those frozen.
Oh, okay.
Pancakes,
I got a
dollar
picture
size ones.
Oh, I got in my mind, Jeremy. You're whipping up pancake batter and cutting up strawberries, and all right.
No.
So back to that other point. You're saying that, like, for instance, Arden's carb ratio is 1 to 4.5, but it could end up being 1 to 4.7 instead.
Yes.
Of right. And you have that,
and it will allow the Tandem will allow you to make those 10th adjustments if the carb ratio is under 10. And you may think, oh, well, that's just being too picky. Well, no, like whenever carb ratios get below 10, they get crazy. My son is 13. He, according to his endo, I don't really understand it. There's 4 stages of puberty, and he's in stage 3, and he's peaking right now, and he doesn't understand how he's still less than 1% low, and he doesn't understand how he's 5.6, and he doesn't understand a lot, but the proper pump adjustment is one thing.
Yeah. So all these little things put together are the answer to stability, right? It's the making sure that the data you're working off of is sound. It's not just randomly picking an amount of insulin, but actually being able to dial it in very closely. And it's consistency with how you are addressing low blood sugars. It's consistency with drinking that glass of water in the morning before you test your blood sugar. Like all those little things. Do you find them to be overwhelming, or do they just happen pretty?
No, they seem a little at first. And I've had a few parents tell me, well, that seems like a lot. I'm like, no, it doesn't really. After about, a week, you'll be like, oh, this makes sense. And the families that I do help, and that they do get this way, you'll see like a huge improvement. They go, oh, I get it now.
Okay.
Because you'll start seeing those improvements. It's not just in the pump or the algorithm. It's how you're treating everything else.
Right. So when you hear me say that more effort up front saves you a ton on the back end, that's how you think of it. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yes. But the thing is it doesn't become a lot up front other than the first couple of weeks while you're getting used to it.
Once you get it going.
You're not being strict. You're not forcing, I'm lucky as hell that my son loves apple juice and he's never become bored of it. I ask him like every other month or so, hey, do you want to try something else other than apple juice? And he goes, nope, I'm good.
Yeah.
But,
Boys, nice
But-
and easy sometimes. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're all set up with a diabetes supplier, and they've told you, don't worry, we're going to send you your supplies on time. You're never going to have to call us again. This is going to be easy. And then one day, your stuff doesn't show up. You run out of your Dexcom supplies, your Libre supplies, your insulin pumps, and the new ones aren't there the way they're supposed to be. So you call them up on the phone, and what do you say? Well, I don't know what you say, but here's what I say when it happens to me. I say, you guys told me this wasn't going to be a problem. They say, this always happens at the end of the year. Well, we needed a new prescription, and we reached out to your doctor, but they didn't get back to us. Then there's this long pause, like it's not their fault. The people who told you they were going to take care of this are now foisting the blame onto someone else. What does that mean that they reached out to your doctor? I don't know. Does that mean they sent him a fax? They call him on the phone? They send up smoke signals? I couldn't begin to tell you what my old suppliers did. What I can tell you is what US Med does. It's simple. They get it done. There's no bullshit. You know what I mean? I'm not supposed to curse during the ads, but you hear what I'm saying. US Med tells you they're going to take care of it. They're going to get a script from your doctor. Then they get a script from your doctor. It's that simple. US Med takes over 800 private insurances. They accept Medicare nationwide, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies with fast and free shipping. Carry everything from insulin pumps to testing supplies, CGMs. They have what you need. All you have to do is go get your benefits checked at usmed.com/juicebox. If you don't like the internet, you could also call 888-721-1514. Well, now we know where you're going to get your blood glucose meter at, but now we need to decide which one are you going to buy. If you ask me, I'm going to say the one that my daughter uses, the Contour NEXTONE blood glucose meter. I have no copy in front of me. I'm not looking at a website. Let me just tell you why I would pick that meter. First thing that pops in my mind, it's easy to hold, easy to carry, easy to put in a bag or pair of pants or wherever you carry your stuff. You know what I mean? Like a pocket. It's small, but not too small. It's easy to read, has a bright screen, and a bright light for nighttime viewing. The test strips allow second chance testing. Here's what that simply means. Should you touch the blood but not get enough, you can go back and get more without interfering with the quality of the test result. And that is not to say that it needs a lot of blood. It actually doesn't need very much at all. The sample size I find to be very small. This is, in fact, the easiest to use, handiest, and most importantly, most accurate blood glucose meter that my daughter has ever used, that I have ever used, that I have ever been in the same room with. The Contour NEXTONE blood glucose meter. Go find out more about it at contournext.com/juicebox. When you get there, you're going to see a very informative website and easy ways to get yourself a great meter. It's actually possible that the meter and test strips could be cheaper in cash than you're paying right now through your insurance for your current meter. And there's very little chance that that meter is as accurate as the Contour NEXTONE. There's only one thing left for you to do. Go to a browser, type contournext.com/juicebox. You will also find links in the show notes of the podcast player you're using and at juiceboxpodcast.com. And by the way, if you're listening in an audio app to this podcast, please hit subscribe or follow. All right, that's it for the ads. Let's get back to Jeremy. He has a lot more to share about how he uses Control IQ.
The biggest thing is, like, we're talking once again about pump adjustment is you'll hear often people will tell you to adjust basal by 10%. That seems to be a pretty standard adjustment. But I always tell people not to. And here's why. Let's say your kid is 0.75 an hour and you add 10% to that. The math to that is it will end up equaling out 0.825, I believe. And that will be a difference of 0.075. You're adding 0.075 when adding 10% to 0.75.
Mm-hmm.
So then they're at 825, which Tandem doesn't have a problem doing. It can go out to that thousands, remember. So 0.825 plus 10%. They need more, another basal increase. You're now at 0.907, and that's a difference of 0.082. So you've went from an increase at 7.5 of 0.075, and you've now increased basal again by 0.82 or 0.082.
Mm-hmm.
Then from 907, you add 10%, you get 0.997. Now you're adding 0.09. It's not consistent. Every single time, whenever I first started out, the best thing the CDE could have told me is every single time, or she kind of showed me on an AGP report, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later, but every time you see a change here, I want you to just change the pump by 0.025. That was my quote baby step. That's what she called a baby step to me.
But a consistent.
And then, but it's
one.
consistent,
Yeah.
0.025, because you'll know what 0.025 does.
Mm-hmm.
If it keeps increasing because you're going by 10%, there's no consistency there. You're adding more and more and more, or taking away less and less. Currently, 0.025 is a huge jump for us.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get basal dialed in enough, I literally move my son's basal by 5/1000ths of a unit of basal per hour. I know exactly what that does, and it's normally 9 out of 10 times enough to get him perfectly back in line.
Wow.
If you take our Dexcom 90-day AGP report, it is a straight line with very little variation. And it's all because of the consistency. It's knowing what that 0.005 or a 0.01 change in basal will do, and keeping it consistent.
How often do you think you change his basal rates?
So I changed them 2 days ago. Before that, I had not touched them in a month and a half to 2 months, even in full bore puberty.
Mm-hmm.
And his average blood sugar is still down there, very low 100s. And his ST is in the mid 20s.
That's excellent.
And I wasn't able to, once you get dialed in and you fully understand how to keep things consistent, things stay consistent. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand there are people in honeymoon that does not apply to you. There are people that, have sports, does not apply to you. While my son is active, that's it. A lot of it's about knowing how to treat before sports, before jumping on the trampoline, before doing all this other stuff. He knows, like, before PE, because he's moved into independent at school. He knows before PE, he goes and asks the teacher, hey, what are we doing today? And if it's something like we're playing dodgeball or we're running a mile, he knows to grab, something out of his bag and get some carbs moving. Mm-hmm. And that's just more consistency. But you want to get into Control IQ?
Yeah.
And actually
I appreciate your overview of how you think about it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's very helpful to me because, you'll admit, I would imagine, maybe you won't, but you listen to the podcast. So you're thinking at this, I think you're taking like things that I talk about and you're being more granular with them.
Yes.
Much more so than I ever am.
Yes.
And you're fine tuning things down even farther. Like you keep tightening that wrench until it's exactly where you want it to be. It's amazing. I mean, it's really well done.
But the thing is, like I said, is that once you get there, you don't have to do much work.
Once it's there,
it's about learning the patterns and staying consistent,
right? And
looking at the AGP report at least once a week, and saying, "Oh, look at that! I might want to scooch that up a little bit," instead of just, "Oh my God, what's going on?" It's like one day it's just random. If it happens 2 days for me, there needs to be a change. If the third day it's still not right, you're going to get changed again. Something's going to change.
You know what my bigger takeaway from this is It's that wherever you are, you're not too far. Wait a minute. How do I say this? Hold on. Let me think, Jeremy. If your management style keeps you at a 200 blood sugar and suddenly your blood sugar tries to jump to an average 210 blood sugar, you don't have to manage much to get back to 200. If your average management keeps you at 150 or 120 or 110 or 80, whatever your management style is, once you're there and you can accomplish it, even when other variables come in and try to move you off of your success, the adjustments to come back to where your norm is are not these great, crazy things that need to be done. Is that the thing you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I agree.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Let's talk about algorithms and how at least Control IQ works, because I often see in posts people saying way wrong things.
Okay.
And I often want to correct them, but I often come off as a jerk. And oftentimes Scott has to get on there and say, "Oh, well, Jeremy's a really good guy."
Boys
really
are not
means well.
Sometimes boys are not good at communicating and writing.
No, absolutely not. So the first thing that you need to know about Control IQ is there's 3 different modes. There's normal mode, there's exercise mode, and then there's sleep mode. Mm-hmm. We're not a sleeping beauty. We do not use sleep mode 24 hours a day. There's a lot of people that swear by it, but my endo would come unglued and I'm just not going to deal with it. Our results are fine. We don't have to go there. So in normal mode, this is where Control IQ is at 90% of the day if you're using Control IQ as it should be. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's the right way because there's many ways to skin a cat. So in normal mode, Control IQ will target 112.5. I know that's a weird number, but it is a real number. However, we'll adjust the basal based on predicted blood glucose levels. Mm-hmm. 30 minutes out, that's 6 readings. Now, if you're maintaining between 112.5 and 160, it will deliver the settings that you yourself or your endo has put into your pump. Nothing changes. It's not doing anything but running off the settings inside your pump. Now, Control IQ will increase basal insulin if the sensor glucose value is predicted to be above 160 in the next 30 minutes. Once again, that's 6 readings. It says, okay, they're moving by +5. The delta is moving by +5 every 5 minutes. If I apply that 6 readings out, are they going to be above 160? Yes or no? If yes, it's going to start increasing the basal. Now, Control IQ will decrease basal insulin delivery if the sensor glucose is predicted to be below 112.5 in the next 30 minutes. Once again, 6 readings out. If you're 180 and you start dumping by 20s, it's going to start, cutting insulin. Control IQ will stop all basal insulin delivery if the sensor glucose level is predicted to be below 70 in the next 30 minutes. So if you're dropping hard and it depending on how fast you're moving, if it thinks that you're going to be below 70 in the next 30 minutes, it will cut all insulin. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes you have to understand that when setting your basal, that while it's important with Control IQ, insulin sensitivity factor is just as important as basal, if not more important than basal with Control IQ.
Okay.
Because the pump uses the ISF, or the insulin correction ratio, or the correction factor, however you want to say it, to determine how much insulin to increase or decrease when making its modulation to the basal. So what I like to tell people is to think of it as an aggressiveness knob. If you're seeing BG cycling, which means you start to go high and then you start to go low, and you're kind of riding a wave all night long. What that means is that you've actually got two wrongs, which look like a right. While it's fairly steady, you're cycling. And what will happen, this happens, I know, with Loop a little bit too. I'm not sure about Omnipod 5 yet, but what happens is if you get the basal a little loose, you'll start drifting up. Then Control IQ will say, oh, they're drifting up. We need to add more insulin. Then the ISF is a bit too stiff, and it will start sending you low, and it will cut insulin. And then you're stuck and then you'll start going high because of the cut of insulin. And then you'll go low because you end up cycling.
Bouncing, yeah.
So what looks normal might be two wrongs look like a right. That's the biggest complaint, is that basal IQ cuts insulin, then they go high, and then they overcorrect and they go low.
Right. So
when the pump's already trying to handle it, and you're not allowing it to because of your settings.
Are you saying that this becomes obvious when you see basically these settings fighting with each other? They're
not fighting each other. They're just wrong.
They're wrong. But
they're not fighting each other. It's just the algorithm responding the way that it was designed to respond.
And using those settings, it makes you a little too low. It cuts itself off, which makes you too high. It gets aggressive again, which makes you low. And you're saying that if these two settings were more in line with what you actually needed, there'd be this stability where there'd be some insulin, but you wouldn't be taking it away and then adding extra and taking away and adding extra all the time.
Yes.
Okay. And that process of even though the algorithm can keep up with the problem, mostly taking away, giving back, taking away, giving back, that is not your goal.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
So we kind of went over what normal mode looks like. Exercise mode, in my opinion, is completely worthless unless you're thinking 2 hours ahead, and what 13-year-old looks 2 hours ahead. Mm-hmm. The way it works is instead of targeting that 112.5, it will target 150 instead. It will still deliver correction doses if you're predicted to be above 180 in the next 30 minutes. It will still increase basal if predicts the blood glucose to be above 160 in the next 30 minutes. It will decrease insulin even if it predicts the BG lower than 160 in the next 30 minutes. It will suspend if it predicts your blood glucose will be lower than 80 in the next 30 minutes instead of 70 like in normal mode. Mm-hmm. So if you know that you're going to go on a bike ride in 2 hours, then yes, you can turn on exercise mode and it will protect you and it's great. Right. If you're running a marathon, an hour and a half, 2 hours away, if you turn it on, it works great. But for a lot of parents, they say, oh, well, it doesn't work. And that's because they turn it on right before their kid gets on the trampoline and then wonders why Johnny goes low on the trampoline. It's not great for those kids, and those families that are a lot more spontaneous. And, I don't know about a lot of people, but like my kid has a full-size trampoline in the backyard next to a huge 16-foot pool. And yes, he uses them together all summer long. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that it's funny because while you're talking about this, I'm relating it to Loop in my head.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking is that when I look at overnight, what I want to see is that Arden's basal insulin is not being cut away constantly.
Exactly.
And that there's no correction, the correction boluses aren't happening all the time. And I do want to say that things happen and you want the algorithm to work, but generally speaking, away from impacts like, boluses, food, hormones, like in just a normal time, which God knows, Jeremy, how often do the normal times happen? But in those normal times, you want your settings to just work. They're where they are, and the result is low and stable.
Yes.
Yeah, and not low, but like normal and stable.
Yes, and then that moves us into that sleep mode that everybody raves about. So really quick, sleep mode will target a very tight range of 112.5 to 120 while it's on, but not deliver any correction doses whatsoever. It will, however, be much more aggressive when increasing and decreasing the basal. Mm-hmm. once again, that's where the insulin sensitivity factor comes into great play. You have to have ISF dialed in immaculately overnight, along with basal. But Thaman normally, he gets down in that 85 to 95 range all night long. From 1 week after starting Control IQ, I slept every single night. I maybe have 1 or 2 nights a month where he has a compression low and an alarm goes off. Other than that, if it wasn't for my sleep apnea, I would sleep all through the night.
85 to 95?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're doing that not in sleep mode?
No, we're doing that in sleep mode at night.
Excuse me.
We're just not in sleep mode 24/7 like a lot of people do. There's a lot of people that their life is it's normally on older type 1s, or type 1s that have the very, very stringent routine every single day where everything's the same. We eat the same breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We exercise at the same point in time every single day. There's not a lot of variation. You're able to turn that sleep mode on 24/7. And if you're these people that have those settings set up just perfectly, there is no reason for Control IQ to dump a 60% correction.
Right.
They do that themselves. They're already so in tune with themselves because they've been doing this for so long that
they're making
they don't
boluses.
need that
60%. They're making great boluses around food. They're not vacillating a lot to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they benefit from sleep mode being more aggressive, and when they're awake, because they're not running away, running 100-yard dash whenever, like a 13-year-old does whenever he sees a girl from half a block away.
Yeah. Right. Or going from the trampoline to the pool, back to the trampoline, or something like that.
Yes, right. Exactly.
I see.
Okay. From there, it's a lot of it is understanding Dexcom reports. And we're talking about Clarity. If you don't have Clarity, download it on your phone, sign into it. There's tons of different reports. And yes, they look intimidating at first. Needless to say, the only thing that matters to me on Dexcom Clarity is that AGP report. It's the very last one. It shows you your average blood sugar at a given time throughout the whole day. Then it has a blue bubble around it that shows, basically, without getting horrifically nerdy, shows you how variable you've been around that average blood sugar. And then from there, it's using those reports to make smart, educated, experienced decisions in a very consistent manner to get better than average results. You look at the AGP report, and if you start seeing, like, on a 7-day average, you keep raising every single day at 3:20 p.m., about an hour and a half before that little kick up, you should probably have a basal segment there. It's about, a lot of people will argue over 2 or 3 or 1 basal segments in a pump.
Yeah.
My son has 9.
Wow.
And the reason that he has 9 is because that's what he needs. And you look at AGP report, like I said, I can pull up a 30-day graph and it's straight as can be. And the blue line is very, very close to that red line in the middle. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say it's not rocket science. It's all with time and experience, and staying very consistent and understanding what each thing that you're adding is going to do.
I'm pulling up Arden's AGP report right now so that I can ask you a question about it. Because what you said was to make, you talked about making smart decisions about changes, but who tells you what those changes are? Like, what about the report says something to you and says, go ahead and, this means do a thing. You know what I mean? Like, so
Sure.
I have Arden's it's interesting, right? It just popped up her last 2 days. And she doesn't have any hormonal impact in the last 2 days, or much less. Her standard deviation cuts in half when that happens. It's very, very, very interesting. It can be as high as 40 at times with still an average blood sugar of 110 to 114.
Yep.
And then as soon as the birth control pill she's on goes to placebo, her deviation goes into the low 20s.
Yeah.
Right away. And that's just because
I've dealt with one other younger female. She was 13, that it was the same way.
Okay.
It just depending on what type of month it was, and we made those adjustments, and we made a different, deal in the pump to deal with that time of the month.
Mm-hmm. And
we figured out, okay, every month she needs this much more 3 days before. She's really regular. Let's treat this the way it should be treated. We know that she's regular. Let's be brave and let's start increasing that insulin the day before we know we need it.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead and go back to the AGP report.
Okay,
Let's talk about
I gotta get my glasses, but it's hard to put them up next to the so I just got old out of nowhere a couple years ago. So I went back and I went to 30 days now. So the last 3 weeks, Arden's been trying. So I think everybody who listens knows, like, we're trying to regulate Arden's period with a birth control pill. It isn't going so great. But so I have her average glucose is 122 over the last 30 days. She has been very low 1.4% of the time, which means under 54. Low 6.4% of the time, which means 70. Under 70, I don't particularly consider that low, but that's okay.
Yeah.
In target, and the target, of course, is 70 to 180 for the report. I have 83.4% of the time, high over 180 10% of the time, and very high 0.3% of the time. Her coefficient of variation was 33 over the last month, and like I said, her standard deviation is 40 when you get all that involved in it. Now, in truth, I don't know. I haven't looked back. I don't look at clarity as much as I should, to be perfectly honest. So when I look at this line that I'm seeing, it appears to be incredibly stable, right around 100, 110 for this last 30 days. I see a little bit of an uptick around 2 p.m. that lasts until about 6 or so. So if she does get higher, she can go 130 or so in that time frame. And when I do see the 180s, it's in that exact time frame, 4 o'clock to 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Anyway, I don't know. What do I do with this?
So I focus on the red line in the middle.
Okay.
And I kind of make sure that I understand that where meals are and that there is going to be a spike. But in that 30-day graph, at least, I normally make adjustments on the 7-day or the 14, but the 30 tells a lot. It tells how long have you had this problem. And if you see on the 30-day graph a slight uptick, because I've seen AGP reports and I'm like, holy hell. And it takes a good month to straighten that red line out like a rubber band. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that they're like that every single day. That just means that your average, that's where your average is. I don't care about day to day.
Yeah, the median.
I care about the average over time because this is a marathon, not a race.
Right.
And so if I saw on the 30-day graph a slight increase at 2 p.m., I would look at my son's pump and I would say, okay, that basal at 12:30, keeping in mind that his lunch is at 11:30 at school. I know it's not lunch. That's a basal issue to me. And I would literally go to 12:30, an hour and a half before 2. And I found that all but one of the kids that I've helped, or one of the families that I've helped, every single last one of them has been an hour and a half before the event on AGP. Mm-hmm. So I would go to 12:30 and I would literally bump him. If it's just a slight one, I would literally bump him 5 1,000ths on his basal.
Okay.
And it will, at 2 o'clock, it will hit, and 0.005 isn't enough to drive them low. And then the next day, if you look at it, you're like, okay, it's still there. But if I did another 0.005, it would be done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I go. I don't get so granular that I go by the thousandth, but I do go by the 5,000ths or the 0.1, because I can look at a line and be like, okay, that happened yesterday too. And at that angle or that delta, the change in blood sugar reading, that angle is going to need a 0.1 instead of a 0.005. Mm-hmm. You'll get used to it. You'll look at a line and you'll be like, okay, that's happened 3 days now. That's going to be a 0.1 instead of a 0.005. That's because you're staying consistent and you know what 0.005 does, or you know what 0.1 does.
Well, so
the
this
0.01, sorry.
No. So when I'm looking at this, looking at Arden's, also the other thing we're doing is that Arden is, we're onboarding more and more responsibility to Arden as it gets closer to her leaving for college. So this is a little bit of her practicing. And I think this is her doing a not great job of pre-bolusing as much as she should for her lunch. So,
you want me to blow your mind?
Go ahead.
We don't pre-bolus at all, ever.
Anymore. Because everything's so tight for you.
Yes.
That it doesn't matter.
It does not matter. Because the other thing that people don't think about, and lots of people do, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of the things that people don't understand is they'll show me a chart and they'll say, well, I dosed correctly for this meal. And look, they're still 250 at the end of the day. But if you look at the line when they dosed, they were already climbing. And the thing is whenever you bolus with any pump on the market, whenever you bolus for a meal, the pump assumes a straight line. Mm-hmm. If you hit bolus, 88 carbs, and hit enter, it's going to assume Tandem will automatically pull your Dexcom reading into that calculator. And let's say it was 150. It will assume that your blood sugar is 150 and completely steady. It does not take in, and this goes for Omnipod, this goes for everything. It assumes a straight line. So if you are 150 and you're an arrow up, it's going to under bolus you. If you are 150 arrow down, it's going to over bolus you. So that comes back to, like, if you look at the meal and you're having 88 carbs, you're 150, and you're, let's say, arrow diagonal up, mm-hmm. and you're looking at the delta and you're like, okay, so the delta is moving about 0.6 right now. You have to think 30 minutes ahead. So 30 minutes ahead at 6:30, that's 6 readings time. That's 30 points more. So you're going to have to think, okay, so I know my son's ISF is 55. So that looks like about an extra 0.7 units of insulin. So what I'll literally have him do is I'll say, hey, what does your pump say to give you? And let's say it says to give him an even 4 units, just to, throw an easy number out there. I'll tell him, hey, can you change that to 4.7, please? Because he's going up. The pump doesn't know he's going up. It assumes he's 150 in a straight line. So you add that extra insulin based on time, you're not going to, half the time they won't even spike. It's understanding that pump isn't going to deliver based on the change of delta before a meal. And I hope that's not too nerdy.
No, are you kidding? That's why you're here. What are you talking about? That's exactly why you're here. Actually, I'm also, I didn't realize that in Clarity that we had settings for the reports set where I don't care about them. To me, a high blood sugar is 140. That's what I, but then that's what I'm looking for.
So lots of people don't have that set up correctly. Now, I understand your idea of a high is 140. Yeah. And there's a lot of us that, that is how it is. I prefer clarity to be set to 70 to 180.
Okay.
And I know that,
tell me why.
Everybody hear me out here. Is ADA standard says 70% in time between 70 and 180 with a SD or a standard deviation of less than 1/3 of the average BG. That is your target. And here's why I use that in clarity to make people understand. 72% of all type 1s do not meet that very, very loose standard. Mm-hmm. And I need people to understand that whenever it's set to 70 to 180, I can say, look, you're 83% in range right now between 70 and 180. Remember, 73% of all type 1s don't even get that.
Ever.
You are doing so much better.
Yeah.
And if you set it to 140, that's great. If you can get it like 80% in range between 70 and 140, that's more work than I care to do.
So I just changed it, and I did it for the last 90 days. And in target range, 83%. So,
yep. So right now, like Thaman, let's do the 90 days. Mm-hmm. Average glucose of 127, very low, 0.1, low 1.3%, in target 91.3, high is 7.4, and very high is 0.6.
That's interesting. Our high and our very high are very similar, and our in target's very similar. That's interesting.
Because we don't put up with it, and we look at things before they happen, and we take care of them before they happen. It's trusting what you know is going to happen, and making sure you do something about it. Don't just, Control IQ, like I said, no algorithm is perfect.
Yeah.
If you just think that you're going to turn on Control IQ or Omnipod 5 for that matter, or Loop for that matter, or any other algorithm, and just be able to set it and forget it, you're sorely mistaken.
It's not going to work out.
What Control IQ does for me is it provides sleep every night and a reduction in the time that I have to study things and the amount of changes I have to make by a better fold of 90%. Mm-hmm. I still have to do a little bit of lifting here. But that's, like I said before, that comes with time and experience and understanding how insulin works in your or your child's body and taking things in a very consistent manner. Once you understand how that point, one change in basal is going to hit, and you're accurately able to change basal, or you correct a low blood sugar in a very consistent manner, things become so much easier because you understand what the impact of the insulin or the carbs are going to have, and your outcomes are going to be more precise and better done. Now, I know it sounds like I'm being like so strict and everything else. I'm not. It's just understanding it. And like once I understood it and I got everything dialed in, I do even less work because I've figured it out for my son, and I've figured it out for these other people that they can just go on cruise control. Yeah. And we know that whenever a change in basal needs to happen or a carb ratio change needs to happen, it's not a big deal. Make the small change to make the impact and let it go. If it happens again, make that small change again and let it go. It's not a big deal.
Right. Well, I think what you're saying has far-reaching implications too. This is a specific situation. You are a really motivated guy who's incredibly smart and tuned into this. Obviously listened to a great podcast that got you going, and you've just run with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm joking, but I'm not joking. I think the podcast is terrific, but you know what I'm saying.
It is.
Yeah. But what I'm going at is that everyone doesn't need to do it at the level that Jeremy's talking about to get the benefit of the big picture of what he's talking about. Because I feel like I almost feel like I'm hearing my voice come back through you on a lot of points about, stay involved, pay attention, don't settle for high blood sugars, don't overtreat low blood sugars. Like those things are just universally true
Yes.
for people.
But when those things happen, whenever you do give too much insulin or you're too bold, don't let that be afraid. Just that is something that happened. And as long as you say, okay, that happened, let's move past it and keep going, and don't get scared with it.
Yeah.
If you overtreat a low and your child goes high, that's okay. That's one high in the time of their life. It is a marathon, not a race. Don't beat yourself up.
Right.
I see all these parents beating themselves up that, oh, well, we overcorrected. Now they're high for the next 3 hours. And I corrected 3 hours ago. And it's like, stop. Just stop beating yourself up. Take care of it.
Yeah.
Drop it. Learn from this situation and move on.
Right.
Your mental health as a caretaker is just as important as your child's health.
Yeah.
Do not allow your child's diabetes to take control of your mental status.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I ended up having to go on to Paxil just to deal with the anxiety. I ended up in the hospital with heart attack-like symptoms and ended up being stress and anxiety. Learn what you can so you understand what's going on. Keep things consistent so you have consistent outcomes. Make small, impactful decisions and drop things that don't work. If it happens one day, it's random. If it happens more than once, change something. Don't wait. And then because you get just the third day it happens, you get frustrated. The fourth day, you start feeling down that you can't take care of your child. Make the change. And if it's something small, just try one small thing and then go, okay, that kind of worked. Let's do it a little bit more and work your way up to being able to do things by yourself. But don't allow this disease to overcome you.
Let me get some clarity on something you just said. So are you saying that prior to you understanding all of this, the stress was a lot? Is the stress still there now?
No, dude, right. We live life, man.
Yeah. So this,
everybody, there's some people that say, oh, your son must not be doing anything. Dude, this kid is more active than most. He's not into any sports. He is, he's a nerd like me. He's in all honors classes. He has straight A's. He's in the National Honor Society. The kid, I can't even help him with his math homework anymore. Mm-hmm. The kid's smart as a whip, but he is still active. He goes for bike rides. He jumps on the trampoline. He swims. He runs around with his brother and sister. He does all types of very active things. He goes to the jump park, and we do this spontaneously. We don't do it in fear. Go, oh, well, we're going to go swimming tomorrow. Oh God, can't wonder what's going to happen with his blood sugar. No, take extra carbs, go in there, give him some extra carbs before he jumps in the pool. Let him have fun. Let's go. Let's live life.
Yeah.
I know it's terrifying, but the thing is you got to try. And if it doesn't work the first time, try again.
Yeah, I think a lot of
eventually something's going to work.
Right. And I think a lot of the mental comfort that comes eventually is from seeing things happen that you expect. And
yes.
Yeah. And paying attention at the beginning to these things, your basal, if you're on an algorithm, even more so for insulin sensitivity, but still on just a regular pump, insulin sensitivity, carb ratios, correction factors, you get those things close even, and things get better. And then once they're close, then you can kind of see them a little better. It's not so wildly out of tune that you have to guess. And I know that all sounds like, yeah, sure, that sounds easy. How do I do that? I mean, I've talked about it a million times in the podcast. I think the way you do it is by getting your basal right first, then start worrying about your meals, your ratios, and then start thinking more about different impacts of different foods, correction factors from there, et cetera. Like you do have to, it takes time to get it straight. You're not going to your doctor's not going to magically set your settings in the right spot. And even if they do, even if they get like slot machine lucky, the kid's going to still grow, or you're even as an adult are going to gain 10 pounds or lose 10 pounds or start walking more or sitting more. And then suddenly those settings aren't right anymore. It takes paying attention. I think one of the most important things you said here is, you got to take a little responsibility and put a little effort into it, and not the kind of effort where you're just like, I'm trying, but like focused effort that that may lead you
a
to
lot of
something.
it is educating yourself properly, but understanding what is actually going on inside of your child's body, and understanding what your body, how their body is different than yours, and understand how food digests differently in your body compared to theirs. If you have a chance to wear a Dexcom, do it. Scott's done it. I've done it. Lots of parents have done it. Once you understand what it's supposed to look like, it becomes so much easier to do it yourself.
And it's a little more relaxing too.
Yes.
When you see 140 blood sugar for 2 hours, it doesn't feel like you've, made some painful failure. You just realize that happens to a lot of people, every day. People with fully functioning pancreases that are working perfectly still see elevated blood sugar sometimes. I mean, I had to eat pretty hard to get my blood sugar to 160, but I still was able to do it with enough pizza.
Yeah, I eat like crap, and that was not an issue with me.
That's interesting. Yeah, I had to eat so much just to hit 160 one time. Other than that, I was eating cereal like I don't know if you remember, at one point I took 2 different kinds of sugared cereal, mixed them together in the same bowl, and ate them. And my blood sugar didn't move.
I think it was Sugar Smacks and Fruity Pebbles.
Corn Pops or something like that, and my blood sugar never even went up. I was almost disappointed by it. I was almost like, oh God, But anyway, geez, Jeremy, this is great. Like, how long do you think it took you to figure all this out, put it into practice?
Slowly over the course of about 2 years, I was about 80% there. Over 3 years, I was like completely relaxed and like, it is what it is. Let's fix it, move on. And was able to just look at things a lot smoother. Now, there are those families out there, though, that have those alpha moms that I love to death, because whenever they get a hold of me and I'm like, what do you do for a living? And they're like, I'm an accountant. I'm a numbers person. Those people, it takes me 2 weeks to figure them out, explain what's going on, and they move right on their way, and they still have, under 7 A1Cs to this day. I wasn't that person.
Yeah.
I am a type of person that, while I was the kid that took the VCR apart and put it back together and it still worked, missing 3 parts, I need to understand what's going on. I'm just one of those people. And I really dove into it, especially the biology part of, what happens and why is his body so much different than mine, and why is it doing this? And understanding what the tug of war, as you describe it, and what can I do on each end of the rope to pull harder, pull less, or
get it right.
And that's making small, concise adjustments.
Right. Well, I have to tell you, while we were talking, I adjusted Arden's basal. So I looked at that clarity report and I thought, this A1C that I've been okay with, which is her right around a 6, because she's making more decisions and choosing boluses and things like that on her own without too much input right now. I thought, oh, this is a reflection of that she's, just kind of finding her stride with it. But then when I looked at that report, I thought, that's not fair, because I have a lot of stability away from food that's still a little higher than I want it to be. So I just changed her basal from 1.1 to 1.2 just to see what would happen. And I'm gonna watch it over the next day or so and see if I can find some consistency. I mean, we have incredible consistency, but to find it a little lower would be interesting. And then I think that'll probably help with the food too that's happening. The food impacts that are happening, like I said, between probably around 1:30, 2 o'clock and 6, 7 o'clock in the afternoon. So I appreciate you making me think about it too. I get busy sometimes too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, that's just the basis of it. There are other things that I do that are more on the ninja level than just the standard stuff. I don't expect people to do that. Like stuff like understanding, like my son eats the same food at the same time every morning during the weekday. So what I literally do is I will, just like, you would, I purposely make his basal a little stronger about an hour and a half before he eats on a weekday.
Mm-hmm.
That's my pre-bolus. That is not normal. I don't teach people that. But the thing is like, I know that at school, his lunch is at the same time every single day.
Right.
And you can't get this kid off of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with a bag of chips, a Diet Coke, and some strawberries. You just can't get that kid off of that meal. Mm-hmm. I offer him all different types of things. Grandma puts in different types of things. It all comes back to peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and this is what I want. Maybe he'll have some pistachios one day.
So you're upping basal as a pre-bolus, knowing that these exact meals are going to happen over and over again at the same exact time.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's literally, knowing or expecting, the damn saying. I'm getting frustrated. But expect what is going to happen is going to happen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I probably should have come up with a saying that was easier to say there, but
and then like the only variable I have is after lunch, is he immediately going to go outside and start chasing girls around, or is he going to stand and do nothing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
those are his variables.
Jesus Christ. And I'm like, dude, why are you dumping? And he's like, oh, I ran around and chased girls at lunch. I'm like, dude, if you're going to do that, cut some carbs out of lunch. If it's 80 carbs, cover 50 carbs.
I don't think
and then you can chase the girls all day long.
Jeremy, I don't think he knows till he sees them.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
That's amazing. I appreciate you doing this very much. Is there anything else that we should be adding to this thing? Because I'm going to ask you a question at the end. I just want to make sure you've got out what you want to say.
No, I don't think. I mean, that's a pretty good understanding of control IQ and how I do it and how I teach people to do it and how we adjust things to live a more, I guess, productive life while having great blood sugars and not having to worry all day about diabetes anymore.
Okay. So, so if I were to come to you and I'd said, hey, Jeremy, I use Control IQ. By the way, you do this out of the goodness of your heart? You help people?
Yeah.
Oh.
And once again, not an invitation to start messaging me.
Do not.
I got 4 families on my plate right now.
It's about enough. Jeremy's got a job, So, all right. So, well, that's very kind of you to help people. So if I come to you right now and I'm like, hey, Jeremy, listen, I'm on Control IQ, but I'm seeing, spikes at meal times that aren't correcting for hours at a time. And I'm getting some lows overnight. What do you look at first? You just pull
all
up that
I need
report?
from them is the 7-day AGP report and their pump settings.
No kidding. And
then I maybe ask 20 questions about what do you normally eat? When do you normally eat? What insulin do you use? Is bedtime consistent on a nightly basis? What kind of activity does your child choose to have?
Right.
That type of thing. Or are they on their period yet? If so, is it regular? Just the normal questions that, either your CDE or your endo or
should be asking and probably aren't.
Should be asking.
Yeah.
And they ask those questions for a very specific reason, because it paints a picture, at least in my head, of when I look at that AGP report, what am I actually seeing? Am I seeing basal that's way off from a kid that has no activity and eats 5 or 6 times a day, non-regulated in time and whatnot? Do I have a very protein-based diet? Do I have a low-carb diet? Mm-hmm. Personally, Thaman, he eats whatever the hell he wants, whenever he wants. Most I've ever bolused for in a single meal was 543.
Wow, 543 carbs?
Yes, you go and look at these damn milkshakes at this burger shop that's up here, and they're just gigantic, and they're like $17, and they have waffles sticking out of them and everything else. And you look at it and you start thinking, and you're like, yep. And then we came to 547 after staring at it for about 15 minutes. And that's what we did. And
how much insulin was that for him?
Oh, sorry, I shouldn't swear.
You're fine. About what?
It was, his carb ratio was 6 or 6.5 at the time. Mm-hmm. Let's see here.
Oh, I can
divide by 6, 90 some odd units.
Wow. Did a 90 unit bolus?
Yeah.
And he wasn't low?
Nope. You know, did I have to hit it again about an hour and a half later when I knew the fat was going to kick in because I trusted that I knew what was going to happen is going to happen? Yes, I did. Do you think Control IQ is going to be able to do that?
No.
Or Omnipod 5 or Loop or anything? No, it can't. You have to be proactive. Do it. Override the pump. All pumps can be overridden, whether it has an algorithm or not.
Yeah. Jeremy, I got to tell you, if I had a diploma for this podcast, you'd be the first one to get it. That's amazing. I would not have had the nerve to give that much, I don't think. And I'm pretty ballsy about it. Wow. That's amazing. I'm assuming most of his boluses are not nearly that large, but
no.
Yeah. But that's a great example of.
He sees like 100 carb bolus maybe once every other week. Dinner averages about 80 to 90 carbs. Lunch is 80, 90 carbs. Breakfast is 65 every single day.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Arden just had a lunch that was a salad, and then she asked for a bowl of vegetables. She had rice, basmati rice, corn, steamed corn, and steamed carrots. And it's a pretty big bowl of vegetables. And I think we bolused 40. I know we picked 45 for the vegetables, which was the carrots, the rice, and the corn. And then I think the salad was even 20. So she got like 65 carbs for salad and vegetables this afternoon. And her blood sugar is still sticking at like 120. So we missed a little bit on the
and that's fine though. That's low glycemic food. You understand that, but right. I mean, you didn't miss.
No, it's great.
Like,
it's
in
nice
my
and
brain,
stable too.
Like the 140 is okay, but I'm sure once you saw that, you're like, oh, it's sticking a little bit. You either let Luke get a little aggressive on everything, or you told her to take a half a unit.
Yeah, I told her to add. I told her to add 3 carbs to her last bolus, which is something you can do in Loop that you can't do in some of the proprietary algorithms, which I think is if the companies
you can do it in Control IQ. You can add carbs
to an old bolus.
I prefer not to do it. I prefer a straight override.
Okay.
Because once again, I know what a half of a unit is. Mm-hmm. Now, if I put 3 carbs in, if it's been more than 1 hour since the last correction, it's also going to correct his blood sugar. It's going to add extra, or it's going to take away extra depending on delta. Mm-hmm. So I would rather say, okay, I'm looking at his line. It's fairly straight. I know IOB says he has 2 units on board, but it's not real. So I'm going to hit him with a 0.5 because I know what 0.5 does.
Right.
If I was to put 3 extra carbs in, it may give him 0.2. It may give him 0.7. It may give him 0.6, depending on which way the arrow is going, how his blood sugar is going, if he's had a correction in the last hour or not, if there's been an auto bolus in the last hour or not. There's so much variability there. I'm not going to deal with that. I know what a half a unit will do. Hit him with a half a unit and let him go.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Now, do we override the pump all day long every day? No.
No, I don't either.
It is so dialed in that you don't have to. But when you do, we do.
Yeah. Hey, Jeremy, I have to tell you, I know that after you talk to somebody the first time, you probably converse back and forth with them and text and things like that. And takes some days and weeks probably to adjust it right down. I found myself wishing we could record every interaction you had with somebody just to see how it happens. I know we can't, but
Sure.
yeah, that's the piece that's missing, is that somebody like you remind people you work in a motorcycle shop. Is that right?
Yes, I'm the marketing manager of a Harley Davidson dealership. I'm actually for 2 dealerships here in town. We own a sister store.
Mm-hmm.
I ride Harleys. I own Harleys. I have a beard. I'm your atypical biker with a weird ass haircut, and I swear a lot. I drink Mountain Dew a lot, and
taught yourself
I
how to
complain
do
about
this.
how fat I am all the time.
And turned yourself into a pretty damn good endocrinologist. So
well, yeah,
yeah.
I'm not going to go into our endo. You're not going to work me into that. But I mean, the other awesome thing is, like, I may be all those things. I may be a pancreas to my son and a few other kids and whatnot. But to me, giving back to the community is what really matters. And like, I am also a voting board member and a marketing director for the Montana Youth Diabetes Association, which is after the ADA camp left Montana and left all the type 1s high and dry, all the volunteers that have been going to that camp since they were kids said, let's get a camp going and get these kids back to camp in Montana.
Cool. Very nice.
And so I'm giving back that way. I have to, because the community has given so much to me and my son's health, mostly, the podcast and you and everybody in the group, that I have to give back some way that I can.
Yeah, I understand. I understand feeling like that. I think you're doing amazing stuff too, on top of everything else. And I appreciate you coming on here and sharing this with people, because there's just nobody really tells you what to do. They just give you the thing, and then it works out as well as it does. And then they call that good. And that's where it stays forever. So
yeah, it's just understanding how the algorithm works and how it doesn't work, and when to step in and when not to step in. And it's time and experience, and not just sitting on things and doing things and trying things and failing and succeeding. And, you do something enough, eventually it's going to work out.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Jeremy, I can't thank you enough for doing this, man. I really do wish you would have named your kid Thanos, because when you say his name, that's what I hear anyway, but that's not your problem. It's mine. I'm glad he's doing so well and that you're doing so well. It really is, it's a testament to what you can accomplish if you get good information and you want to put some effort into it. It really is astonishing. I hope you're proud of yourself. Seriously.
I try.
Yeah, no, really, man. It's really something that you've accomplished. So that boy might never know, but I know, and the people listening know. So, like I said, I would send my first ever degree off from the podcast will go to you if I ever make one.
Sounds good.
Don't look for me to do that. That sounds like a lot of work. But I really can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. Thank you very much.
Not a problem, Scott.
Well, first, we want to thank Jeremy for coming back on the show and sharing what he's learned about Control IQ. And then we want to thank US Med and remind you to go to usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514 to get your free benefits check. Thanks also goes out to the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. You can find out more and get started right now. You can actually buy one right there at this. I know you can buy one at my link, contournext.com/juicebox. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. What else should I tell you? Oh, there are many other episodes about algorithm-based pumping. I have a list of them, in fact. Want me to tell you what they are? What the hell? We're all here together, right? What, are you in a big hurry to get back to your job? Let's just listen for another second. Okay, here they are. The first episode I ever done. Oh boy. The first episode, this is going well. Start over. The first episode I ever did about an algorithm was looping. It was episode 227 called Diabetes Concierge. Did one then called A Loopy Few Months, episode 252. Then episode 304, Loop-de-Loop. Episode 312, Fox in the Loop House Part 1. Episode 313, Fox in the Loop House Part 2. Episode 326, we talked about the MiniMed 670G. And in episode 420, Fox in the Loop House Part 3. Those are with Kenny Fox. You'll love those. In episode 537, Haley came on. She's a tandem pump trainer. In episode 601, we told the story of how I started looping in an episode called Gina Made Me Loop. Episode 620 was an exclusive interview with Omnipod CEO called Exclusive Omnipod 5 Interview. And of course, today, in episode 662, Jeremy breaks down how he uses Control IQ. We're going to be talking a lot more about these algorithms in the future. So if you're enjoying these, go check out the old ones. And if you just got done with this and thought, I'm not getting an algorithm, go check out the Pro Tip series, and they will definitely help you pump without the algorithm. As a matter of fact, they'll help you pump with the algorithm too. But, I'm just trying to find a way to mention some more stuff in the podcast. I think you see what's going on. All right. Thanks again for listening. Your support means everything. Wonderful ratings and reviews pouring in for the podcast. Downloads and streams are at an all-time high. And all of that means that you are sharing the podcast with someone else. And for that, I cannot thank you enough. It is the most important piece about how the podcast grows. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, BetterHelp. You can get 10% off your first month of therapy with my link, betterhelp.com/juicebox. That's betterhelp.com/juicebox. If you've been thinking about speaking with someone, this is a great way to do it on your terms. betterhelp.com/juicebox. I also want to thank Jeremy for, even though this is a best of, he really put his heart into this one. It's a fantastic episode that just people seem to love over and over again. So thanks so much, Jeremy. We should have you back sometime. And let me thank Touched by Type 1 for their sponsorship and support, and remind you to go to touchedbytype1.org and find them on Facebook and Instagram.